Namaste. Namaste. Joining us online, welcome. So we moved up this meeting half an hour, and we live in Miami. So some people think Miami is part of the United States, but that's not really true. Miami is definitely and irrevocably part of Latin America. And so we have, for instance, the Argentinians, who have a culture where you're supposed to be at least a half an hour, no, hour and a half later than the appointed date, time. So when there's a party and it's supposed to start at 8:30, if you show up at 8:30, the lady of the house is still in curlers and their underwear. So it's a total embarrassment. Nobody's ready. The food isn't there. Nothing. So you're supposed to come at 10:30 or maybe 11:30 or so. That's when the party actually starts. Yeah, one Latina here who's turning her head in shame. See? They're starting to come already. It's amazing. But then amongst those Argentinians, there are some Germans living, like myself. And for Germans, 7 o'clock means 7 o'clock, of course, you know? And you better be there 10 minutes early. So we have this melange of culture clashes. It's absolutely delicious. So if you hear the door opening and closing and people coming later, just know what's going on. So what do you do? What do you do as a German in an Argentinian culture? You surrender. What else can you do? So surrender. Let's talk about surrender a little bit. Let's make it maybe the topic of the evening. We'll see how it goes. What do we surrender to? What is, you know, this word surrender is getting kicked around. And of course, you know, in the old way, it's surrender your will to God, be a servant to God, surrender to the guru, to the, you know, preceptor. And that was good in the old days when it was still like really clear to everybody what God was and who the guru is or that sort of thing. You know? But now it's all mixed up because we've poked our noses into different levels of understanding. And with that can come a sizable confusion, because when you look at something from this level, it looks different than from this level or from this level. So, and then there is the level above all levels, which is no longer a level. Am I talking Greek here to you?
No.
You're good with me?
Great, I'm following.
You're here the first time, so I needed to check.
Thank you.
Okay, so one of the ways to understand this surrender business is in the Ramayana, Hanuman, who is often seen as the perfect servant. Hanuman, the monkey god, has a conversation with Sri Ram, who is God incarnate, and of course stands for our true being. Hanuman is the power of faith and the power of devotion and service. And Ram, the self, God, asks Hanuman, how do you look on me? How do you look at me? What's your relationship with me? And Hanuman says something very interesting. He says, when I identify myself in my body, then I see you as the master and I see myself as the servant, and everything I do is just in service to you. And when I see myself as the soul, the indwelling spirit, then I know that I'm a reflection of your being. I'm a tiny part of your infinite presence. But when I have the vision of truth, then I know that you and I are one and the same. So we have three different levels of understanding here. we all, to some extent, identify with body, mind, personality, all the stuff that dies when we die. And when you look deeply, you understand, of course, that, yes, I can't be that, because that's going to be gone in a few years. It's just here for a little flash and then gone. So who I am is something much more, something absolutely permanent, something that doesn't die when the body dies. And that's easy for us to know, because if you've been with the corpse of someone you loved, you were with a corpse, you weren't with that person. So the person was something else. There was the body and the mind. The body held the brain, which had this human mind and its memories and so on. And they're at an end, they're gone. But that consciousness that the person was is not visible to us, perhaps present, but we may not know. So we know somewhere, at least intellectually, that we are not this body, that the body comes to an end. We try to ignore it, but we know. So in that state, to serve in the name of this highest, of the supreme consciousness, to serve humanity, to serve yourself, first of all, and this is what we often forget. We get busy serving others and fixing the world without having fixed us. So let's talk about that first, to serve ourselves, which means to elevate our awareness, which means to free us from whatever it is that burdens us. And then also serve others, and this is a wonderful sadhana, a wonderful spiritual practice when we're, for instance, in the grip of a depression or some worries or so, we find something we can do for someone else. And it immediately takes us out of that worry, out of the depression. And we enter into a bigger life, a bigger sphere of being. And in the Bible it says, whatever you have done to the least of your brothers, you have done for me. That's what Jesus said. And I think that's very, very powerful and important for us to understand. So, on that level we serve. On the next level, this level of soul, of our deeper identity, we realize that we are a part of that supreme. We are a reflection of that light. And so with that, the practices of yoga open, because when you know that, then you can engage in activities and skills that allow you to shed the veils that are in front of our eyes, that make our vision limited and make us believe we're the body, we're temporal and that which dies. But when we have the vision of truth, we know that the Supreme and what we are is one and the same. And this knowing is, of course, not intellectual knowledge, it's the experience of it. So it so happens that most of us aren't living in that ultimate state all the time. And if we have tasted that, and a lot of people have these days, they've tasted that ultimate identity, that, soham, I am the self. Then what do you surrender to? See, that's where the confusion sets in. So maybe you're not in that state anymore, you're back in your personality, and you're struggling with this or that or the other thing. But because you've had this experience of the higher self, of your oneness, you may think that the solution lies in getting back to that. But that's maybe not possible right now because you're dealing with something else. You're dealing with a personality characteristic or personality obstacle of depression or anxiety or whatever you're dealing with. behavioral issue, relationship conflicts. So we need to have a way to deal with that state, knowing the ultimate truth that we're one with it all, but we can't reach it right now. So this motion, this ability to surrender, then comes in a very, very precious way. Because we may know a lot of things, but haven't really fully realized them yet. And so we can be humble enough to realize, well, you know, I'm kind of messed up right now. I'm not that clear. I'm in my personality. So Hanuman said, when I'm in that state, serve. Okay, so you serve. Or if you have the sense that you're not separate, but not completely knowing you're one yet with the ultimate, but you know you're a reflection of it, and then you may want to surrender your troubles to this higher power. And this higher power that you have already experienced as being one with, and when we experience it as being one with, for most of us this comes sort of in an impersonal way. It doesn't have a face to it. The self, by definition, when you are it, if it has a face, it's your face. But when we're not in that enlightened state, then we can have relationships with beings that have more fully realized their oneness with the Supreme. And there you turn to whoever you feel close to. A Christian would turn to Jesus, or to Mary, a Catholic maybe, or to God the Father. And it's a more abstract relationship. A Jew may turn, I don't really know, to Abraham, to Moses, to some of the forefathers of their religion. Someone who follows a particular teacher would turn to that teacher. And even if you don't have that kind of a relationship with a sacred, enlightened being, you can know that this supreme awareness, Brahman, in its ultimate state, it is simply transcendent. But as soon as it touches creation, there is the sense of compassion. Because why? Because all of creation has emerged from that which is not created, the ultimate. This is the Father God, this is the Mother God, the Mother being all of creation. And Father and Mother are one in the love that is there. The Father God, or the abstract absolute, gives birth to creation out of love. And that love, even though it loves in such a vastness we cannot even imagine, it loves all the countless universes that it creates at any moment. And yet it loves us personally exactly where we are, just where you are now. And nothing, not a breath, not a mind moment of your existence is lost to it. We are so completely loved that we have no conception of it. Our minds simply aren't equipped to understand that kind of particular absolute love. So how can you make it your experience what I'm speaking about? And it's, I think, fairly simple. When we're suffering in some way, and something is wrong, and someone we're very close to has a severe illness maybe, We can ask for help. We could surrender our burdens. We can say, you take care of it. I cannot carry that. And it turns out we don't have to carry it. Because that self, that supreme essence of who we ultimately are, can carry it for us because it carries all of reality already. So we surrender not to an entity per se, although it seems that way. We surrender to the Guru, we surrender to God, we surrender to Christ. It seems that we surrender to a person. But that's not really true, because that person, let's take Jesus as an example, that person is simply a gateway into the consciousness that is in that personal being, this body and self that we can imagine or have some kind of relationship with. Because in that person is a consciousness that is one with the ultimate, that is one with God. And so by surrendering to this person, we're not surrendering to a person, but to that ultimate consciousness, which is our ultimate consciousness. There's only one. And that's why I can sit here and talk about all the religions and paths in the same breath. Because there is only one ultimate reality that comes to us in so many different ways, so many different forms, so many different traditions, so many different paths. So we surrender, we pray to this consciousness that is ultimately us. This consciousness that when we feel it, puts us absolutely at ease. It is complete peace. It is an all-embracing love. It is wonderful and nurturing beyond our imagination. So we surrender only to love. And what could be safer than that? Because of the ego, of course, is always not sure about surrender. But there's also something inside of us that is, I'm just going to say bigger than the ego, but it's beyond the ego. There's a knowledge here and a way that a child knows instinctively to trust its mother. Imagine you're a tiny little baby and your mother holds you in her arms and you just rest in that presence and give up the burden of having to carry yourself as a separate entity that has to manage life and carry responsibility and all of that. You can just let go into the softness of this embrace. And so this is something wonderful that we can all practice. Can we surrender? Can we let go of the burdens that we have put on our own shoulders? Can we allow ourselves to be loved by this cosmic presence? And this cosmic presence, of course, is alive in us in the very heart. So it's really a question of relaxing. Can we relax enough? And that's really difficult for most of us, because we have strictures of old fears and pains and having to be alert and having to be performed, you know, all of those tapes we carry. So we're burdened by that. And yet there is that place in all of us that knows how to surrender because we did it as children. And we unlearned it because of the stresses of life. So if we can, in complete privacy, because it may be difficult to share this in some way, or in a very deeply trusting, loving relationship, we let down our guard and we open up and we surrender. So that's the same of what we practice in heart sourcing. When you go into the heart and you just a little bit maybe can feel that inner essence and allow it to touch you, allow it to nurture you, allow it to bring you into that state of ease. That is true surrender, true safety, true letting go. So when I was just out there thinking about this, I opened my book and it opened up to a page with a little chapter called The Universal Form of the Guru. And it speaks about an experience that I had some years back, where in a moment of grace, something completely shifted in my awareness, and I noticed that the separate sense of I was no longer there. And I looked around me and I became aware that I was in the presence of my guru, but not my guru in his human form. My guru, or the guru, everyone's guru, that awareness in us and in a sacred being that is one with itself. And for a little while, lasted about 3.5 days, I think, I was in this state. And this is what I wrote about it, just a little part of it. Wherever I looked, I saw unlimited consciousness appearing as the world. Yet, this vast and majestic creation had a personal feeling to it. Everywhere I looked, I saw and felt the essence of Maharaji. His love and his unmistakable presence permeated everything. It was surprising at first, but then I realized in this oneness with the Divine Self that for me, he is that self. He is one with all things. As I entered this oneness, I merged into his cosmic form, universal and personal at the same time. It was beyond any notion of an I, and at the same time carried the sweet flavor of the most personal love. Swami Muktananda said, "When you love the Guru as you love the world is filled with the Guru." If you are devoted to a realized being, to Jesus, to Krishna, to Shiva, to one of the many forms of the Divine Mother, to a liberated Guru or saint, then the experience of the Self will have for you the familiar taste of the form through which you fell in love with the Self. Everyone is a reflection of my face, Maharaji said. And so, naturally, for me, everything was of his essence. Everyone and everything is the beloved. This is what complete love does. It makes you come alive down to the last fiber of your being. It thrills you to no end. In that love you need nothing else, for this love is complete unto itself. This love animates all of creation. It is fearless and deathless. In this love, you honor the body as a temporary vehicle, as the great servant it is, no more and no less. But you, in your true identity, are pure awareness that has no limit and will never die. At the moment of physical death, the body is left behind. But what can happen to this exalted awareness? Where can it go? It is the source of all things. Those who have realized this while still alive have already died to any illusion of limitation. As Ramana Maharshi declared, you will know in due course that your glory lies where you cease to exist. And in Maharaji's words, the body passes away. Everything is impermanent except the love of God. So let's go back to that image that is, I think, in all of us in a very deep way. This image of the little infant in the arms of the mother. This motherly love is the love that the universe has for us. It is a question of attunement. If we're attuned only to the masculine parts, the rational knowledge and all of these aspects of reality, then we won't be able to feel that motherly love. But it is woven into the fabric of the universe, just like everything else. So if you just for a moment imagine this little infant, you are this infant, and you surrender to the presence of the mother, to this caring and nurturing and protecting presence of the mother. And you've seen it. A little baby just sort of puts his face on the mother's breast, and his or her sense of self just disappears. That's what Ramana Maharshi said when he says, your true glory lies where you cease to exist. It isn't that we cease to exist as beings. That is indestructible. It is that we cease to exist as egos. As I have to do it my way. Don't mess with me. I want this. Ooh, I want this. That movement comes to an end, even just for a moment. You can always grab it back. Yeah, you leave your shoes at the door, and they're still there if you want to leave. So that great love, it's yours. It's part of the universal fabric. And my God, how heavy we carry the burdens of life, that we pile on ourselves because of how we think, and the patterns of emotions that we are accustomed to. We all need a break, you know. And we're talking about giving yourself a break. And it's not all that easy to step out of those deeply ingrained habits of tension that we have, of, you know, ego desires and defenses. Because we think that we have to have this ego structure in order to be safe. Now that's very interesting. Let's have a look at that. What does the ego structure actually do? Yeah, it allows us to go places, do things, all of that. That's fine and well. But on top of that, it gives us a great deal of burden. It gives us all the stressful thoughts that we experience in a day. It gives us all the do's and don'ts and must nots and shouldn't haves and all of that stuff that we are busy with. And it burdens us with the fact that we so easily take responsibility for the flow of life. And are we really responsible for that? I mean, just look at, somebody you know dies. And there may be grief, and it's like the fabric of life for moments seems torn in that particular place, in those relationships. But the flow of life continues undisturbed. The flow of life does not depend on us. The flow of life carries us. The flow of life lives us. The flow of life is God manifesting as us. But we carry it like it's our responsibility. So that part of the ego, we are capable of surrendering. In your meditation this evening, perhaps go into the heart and speak to that highest reality that you know of, whether it has a face to it, whether it's a being, or whether it's abstract, it doesn't matter. And give yourself to the infinite safety and infinite caring and infinite power, but the power in the context of true caring, full, unconditional caring. You don't have to deserve this, what I'm talking about. You don't have to have been a good boy or girl to be able to do that. Not at all. You just have to find a tiny little bit of that ability of the baby to rest its face on the mother's breast and let go. Let go of carrying all of that. Let go into this deep love that has been waiting inside of you for God knows how long. Forever. God knows how long. Forever. Waiting for us to notice. And yes, we can't do it all at once because we're just not used to it. It's sort of a new dimension to move into. But we can do a little bit each day. We can become a little softer to that. A little bit more sensitive, a little bit more inviting to our own love, our own nurturing. And that is really serving ourselves in the most profound way. Because as we nurture ourselves, we feed ourselves, we love ourselves, naturally we become more loving. We become more cool people to be with. And, sooner or later, some of the people around you will pick it up. Maybe even your mother-in-law, who knows? Or the person that you think will never get it, who knows? But you're not doing it for them, you're doing it for you. So this is the yoga of love. It's great to have a relationship with an enlightened being. And they don't have to be alive. Because those beings, as I just read, they have no place to go. They simply become everything. Hello, Maharaji. Hi, Jesus. Here's the Divine Mother. I was with Byron Katie one time with a big group of people, and we walked in the desert around Barstow, California, where she used to live. And that desert was her guru. She was one of those rare people who awakened spontaneously and didn't have a guru. And she has funny stories about that. She says basically she was like too not trusting to have somebody show up in a form. But then something happened, so she's like hanging out into God knows what space. Yes, God will know. But suddenly this woman is sitting in a chair in her room, and she looked like Miss American Housewife, the really tame little lady, like very nice, and she was just there. And I don't know if there was ever a real teaching going on, but Katie said, this is all I could allow. This was the only form of something that felt safe to me. Because remember, she got awakened in out of a very painful place in her life. Right? So this was the only kind of form of something that she wasn't freaked out by. So no big guru or deity with 10 heads or something like this. That would have been the end of that. But that little lady shows up, right? And was a presence that stabilized her, I guess, and was just there and nurtured her when she needed an external presence, a form, right? And then she disappeared. So we were out in the desert with a group of maybe 200 people. And at one point we were walking back out of the desert. So the desert, because she didn't have a guru, she ran out in the desert and spent a lot of time out there in this total stillness. And that was her teacher, she says. So her guru was that desert. She took us to visit her guru, right? And on the way out, we all laid down on the ground and we looked at the nighttime sky, out in the desert. It's like so clear, there's no lights, and the air is totally dry, so you can see like a trillion stars. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I was laying down on the ground, like right next to Katie, and she started laughing. And she said, when God created the world, He wanted us to know Him. And He tried to figure out, what am I going to do so they can't miss me? And they really get to know me. And then He said, well, I guess I'll just become everything. Then they can't miss it. And what did we do? Oh, we made Him into a little form and put Him on the shelf. And that was Him, that was God, but not this. Couldn't be life. This is the valley of suffering here, right? God may be all-powerful, except for one thing. He cannot be present. He cannot be absent. Not possible. Because this limitless consciousness and love we call God is that within which all form appears. And it cares for each one of us so individually, so deeply. And the invitation is for us to open the heart and to allow ourselves to know that. And ultimately, yes, we will find that caring presence to be our own. Absolutely. But while we're not there, let's take smaller chunks of the pie. Take whatever love you can feel right now. Ease your heart down into a state of peace and quiet. You don't have to be always alert, because who knows what's going to come around the next corner. It's okay to let go. And again, we know how to do it because we all do it when we go to sleep, every night. We don't fret like, oh my God, I'm going to surrender to sleep, I can't do that. No, we love it. Surrendering to God, surrendering to this higher presence isn't any different than that. It's just maybe getting tired of ourselves. That's a really good thing that can happen to us. being tired to be who we think we are. And really, it's just such a small little reflection of what we really are. So anyway, that's my 2 cents about surrender. Do we have a question?
Yes, are you open to it?
Please, yes.
Okay. Denise asked, let me just select her so she knows that this is going on right now. How can I distinguish intuition from my internal sensations? My mind has been changing so much lately, and each position feels very real.
Each what?
Position.
Position.
Meaning the intuition and the
right.
sensations. Mm-hmm. So they all feel very real.
Well, your body identity carries sensations, and the sensations can be caused by physical causes or by emotional causes. So emotions we feel in the body. And the impression that I'm getting is that you, Denise, are developing the internal sensitivity, internal senses of really feeling into your body and self. And that's wonderful. And it doesn't come overnight, because we have all lived with our attention outward all the time. We know how to use our outward senses, but our inward senses need some training and some practice. So at first, it can be a little confusing. But when you become still and more peaceful, and meditation is really made for that. In meditation, the purpose of meditation is that we can actually be present with and notice what's going on inside of us. You know, if you don't ever slow down, you have no clue what's going on with you internally. Maybe every once in a while you notice I've been angry, or I've been really stressed, or something. Yeah, that's something, but you're like always out there. So we're pulling our attention in, we're checking, we're learning, we're doing open attention, we're feeling sensations that we may not have felt for a long time. That sensitivity gets more and more subtle, so we can distinguish more and more different sensations and so on. So that's the level of body and emotions, and connected with that is thought. So thought can trigger emotions, then we feel them in the body and so on. Intuition is the higher part of the mind. So it comes in a very different way. Intuition, I trained myself in intuition. It's like we go through life and there's constantly situations where we have to make decisions to do A or B, you know, to go this path or that path. And you can reduce even more complex situations into just a series of yes or no kind of decisions. Do I go left, do I go right, you know? So I trained myself to be guided by intuition in a very simple way. I understood that mechanism that I would have a yes or a no already inside of me when I raised a question. So in other words, I could bypass the thinking mind and go right to the intuitive mind or the wisdom mind to get my answer. I wouldn't have to figure out life. I could participate in the flow of life through this deeper or higher faculty of the intuitive mind. So I would do things like, well, I've told this story before. I had a drive from my office home, and there were 2 different roads I could take, and at one point the road would diverge, and I would either have to go straight or left. It didn't make much difference. The distance was the same, the view was the same, pretty much, you know, American suburbia. And then I noticed when I would leave the house, the office, I would ask, which way do I go? So that you frame it as a yes or no question. At that intersection, do I go straight? Is there a yes or a no? And I noticed whenever I left the office, there was never an answer. The answer only appeared when I was in the car driving toward the intersection. I had to either go into the left lane or stay in the straight lane. That's when the answer was always there. And you know, it was one of those things that it really didn't seem to matter. Of course, it might have mattered because going the other way, I may have gotten in an accident. But I used a quite neutral situation that had no pressure, no tension in it, to train my mind to be sensitive to that. And that I tried at times to get a feeling. Does it feel like I should go left or straight? And I couldn't quite get that, because a feeling again has to do with feelings, with sensations, and it didn't come like that. I asked for a yes or no answer. And in increasing stillness, I could hear or notice a yes or a no was already there. Yes, the thinking mind may get in your business there, because if your ego mind has a secondary motive, like it wants you to go straight for some reason, it will try to interfere with that inner voice. So it's not something that comes like overnight, that you can train your mind overnight. It's really a purification process of the mind and your whole being. And then that intuitive voice will become more and more available. Now it is for me often like just very clear. I have sometimes I don't ask the question, and sometimes when I should, I don't ask the question. But when I ask the question for this yes or no answer, sometimes the answer is just so crystal clear immediately there. But that comes with some practice. So it's great that you're experiencing those inner sensations, and try to distinguish from the physical/emotional type sensations and that inner voice. And how do you distinguish them? As you get more still, these inner sensations and events like the yes or no will tell you what they are. So just look at them deeply. And if you can't quite be clear about it at one point, well, no big deal. We're all in training. Okay? Anyone else have a question? Okay. So I guess I gave you some assignment, if you will, if that helps. In your privacy tonight, or whenever you get to it, become very still and see yourself as the infant you once were. That infant is still inside of you. And just lean your head against well, I'm going to say your mother's breast. And I know how difficult this is for some people who have had more difficult relationships with their mothers. So it may not be the best or immediately available metaphor for you. So again, it comes in handy if you have, say, a relationship with Jesus, and you can do it in your imagination with that being, or any other sacred being, or a divine mother. But even if in the later years your relationship with your mother has become difficult, as it is with so many of us, there was that time. A time when you were able to trust absolutely, 100%, completely. And perhaps just because your ego structure was just not formed yet to keep yourself separate. But nevertheless, you were able to surrender into that peace, into that love, into that sense of being absolutely protected, like we do every night when we go to sleep. So practice that, play with that. Bring the love that is in you out by relaxing into it. And use imagery like that. Use whatever sense of trust and ease and surrender comes naturally to you. So that's my invitation for today, or a meditation tonight, or at some other time. Because that great love in us just waits to be discovered and then shared, for no other reason but that it's a great lot of fun.
Should we practice? Should we practice some meditation?
You want a meditation? Okay, let's do a meditation. Just ask. So I'm going to use this image of your own mother. But please feel free to replace that with any being. If you feel a sense of discomfort there, replace it with any being that you feel comfortable with. You can even replace it with the fact that you yourself are in this body, and this body has a warmth and life and caring and the great softness of compassion in it. So in whatever way you can taste that, I trust you will find your way. So relax for a moment into that space of the heart. Feel your breath. Moving gently in and out. And perhaps you can feel already that the breath itself is calling you into the heart. Into the great embrace. Whether it's an external or internal embrace does not matter at all. However you envision this. Because it will melt your heart. And imagine yourself in this small little body of a very young child. Pick your favorite age, but it's younger than 5. And see yourself in your most favorite place. And you don't need to remember that. You can just make it up. What is your most favorite place to be in at that age right now? Is it to be with your mom? Is it to be with your dad? With a big brother or sister? With a beloved animal? out in nature, just by yourself in your bed. Just find a place that feels completely comfortable and safe for you. And use that imagery then. I will go back to the imagery of you in the arms of your mother. And feel the way the skin feels as it's being touched. Feel how each touch is like a wonderful, warm, caring caress. And resolve all internal feelings into that loving caress. And then lay your head down on your mother's breast. And inhale the sweet scent of her skin. And the softness and the warmth. And notice your softness and your warmth as well. Every being, whether man or woman, has such a mother inside of them. So lay your face on her breast and merge into that safety. Just like you merge into sleep at night. And now consciously going deep and deeper and even deeper into this place of trust. This space of absolute beauty. And notice the absolute security in this surrender. All the issues of life, you can leave them out of the outside the door. They'll be there waiting for you. But right now, you are just with love itself. And perhaps you hear your mother or some other voice singing a wonderful lullaby to you. A divine lullaby, inviting your soul to surrender. and feel and listen into your heart space. Where all this love, all this deep, nurturing goodness is always there for you. And if this feels good to you, or if you even think it might feel good if you could get into it a little deeper, then I invite you to come back to this space again and again. And you'll find many ways to do it. Come back to it again and again until you no longer leave this heart space. Until that softness in you has conquered the hardness of desires and fears, of having to know and to do. In the recognition that you are the flow of life. You are what you've been searching for. And let's take a deep breath. Exhale. Again. Thank you for joining us. Namaste. Namaste.